the filter by URL. So earlier, somebody asked, and I don't know who was that, oh, I guess Naveen did, who said, I want to show only the records which are marked as discontinued on the page load. So how do I do that? Well, here is an example of what we want to accomplish. What we want to do is effectively pass in something like, in this particular case, I want to say supplier equal exotic liquids and category equal beverages right on the URL itself. And that way, as an example, I may have a link someplace else, or I may have a menu someplace else, which only displays as a starting point certain pre-selected items. And of course, the end user has a chance of then changing it to all suppliers and all categories. But this way, as Naveen said, you want to start off by basically only showing them as discontinued or showing them as a specific supplier or a specific category, and then leave it to the end user to essentially then modify those filter values basically. Of course, if you want to limit it, the entire screen, you do it by the query where clause that I showed you on the panel wizard. But let's say I want to do it at the URL level. How do I accomplish this thing? So you notice how when I filtered by the URL values, the data is filtered to that thing. So what's our strategy? In this particular case, the good thing is I don't have to make any layout customizations because I'm not changing the look and feel of the page here. All I'm trying to do here is change the code to basically say to handle things. And specifically, what do I need to change? Well, I need to change two different things basically. Number one I need to do is I need to override what's called the create where clause. The create where clause is the function that essentially creates the where clause that is being used in order to retrieve the records from the database. And all create where clause really, if you think about it, handles three different things. The first thing it does, it takes the static where clause and adds it to make it the where clause. What is the static where clause? That's the where clause that you specified on the query wizard, on the panel wizard's query step. The second thing it does, it basically then allows you to add where clauses based on filter values. Filter values like if the user selects exotic liquids or whatever the name of the supplier is, then that value is added to the where clause by create where clause. And the third is that any sorting that needs to be done is also handled inside here as well as any search things that you have typed in. So that's the job of the create where clause. So what we want to do is we want to add the URL parameters. And specifically, we want to add them only the first time around, because if when the page is first displayed, but we don't want the create where clause, the URL parameters to be included if the user makes some changes. Like for example, if the user selects a different value in the filter, we want to use that different value. So we only want to restrict it the first time the page is displayed. The second thing we need to do is we need to override the populate filter methods simply to set the current value. So the user selected, exotic liquids as the value on the URL. We want to be able to specify that in the populate filter method in order to set that. So how do I accomplish that? Let's go through and actually do this thing. And I'm again going to copy and paste the code and then walk it over with you. So let's go back to RNSP Designer. So now if I look over here, I'm looking at the same show products table page that we've been looking at. And what I want to be able to do is select the table. And I want to be able to, or select the filter over here, or actually I'll select the table over here, and select the code. And if I look at the products table control class, I have the ability to add a whole bunch of functions. But specifically what I want to be able to do is override the create where clause function that is automatically created for me by RNSP Designer. Now if I look at the base control class, I have the ability to look at the generated create where clause, but in this particular case, all I'm trying to do is add to whatever is already existing based on RNSP Designer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the class that I am overriding. There's a plus icon that is displayed, so I know that I'm adding a new create where clause. I select the create where clause and add that, and it's just going to be an empty create where clause, and it calls the return my base create where clause. So again, I'm going to go back and I'm going to open up my filter by URL document. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this code, and I'll walk through with you. Oops. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this line, and I will. So let's see what I'm trying to do over here. First thing that I'm going to do is I replace that return my base create where clause to instead set it to a variable. I say dim wc as where clause, and I get the where clause that was specified by the underlying generated function. So I say, you know what? I want to just use whatever is available from whatever IronSpeed Designer has automatically generated. I want to change it, but I don't want to replace it. So that's why I want to call the my base create where clause, retrieve that. I then check to see if, for some reason, if there was an error condition or anything like that. If the value is nothing, I just create an empty where clause over here. Finally, and here is one of the most important things I need to do. I need to check whether if this page, sorry about that, if this page is something which is going to be retrieved, if this page is being posted back, what that means is the following, that the first time around, the is post back flag is going to be false, meaning that the page is being displayed for the first time around, and subsequent times, if I change a filter or if I specify search criteria or if I click a button, always the is post back flag is going to be true. This is standard .NET. I'm not suggesting anything which is new over here with respect to IronSpeed Designer. The post back flag is set to true for all subsequent displays of that page. Only the first time around it is false. So what we want to do is we want to add these other clauses only the first time around. So if is post back equal to true, then what we do is we return whatever the where clause that was created by IronSpeed Designer's generated code, basically. So we don't want to change that for subsequent times. So we just want to change that only the first time around. So if is post back is false, it's going to fall through and going to do something additional over here. Well, what is it going to do? Well, the first thing that I need to do is I need to retrieve the values from the URL parameter. Okay, so I just simply do, again, standard .NET. I do me.page.request.queryString, and I retrieve the URL parameter called supplier, and I retrieve the URL parameter called category. And then what I do is if I say if the supplier is specified, because there may be a case that the supplier is not specified or category may not be specified, you want to be able to essentially do error checking. If it is specified, which is what effectively this not is nothing is doing, then I want to do a I-AND, which is essentially I'm ANDing the existing where clause with a new where clause. And what is that new where clause? The where clause, as you can imagine, has three parts to it. Is the left-hand side, which is a field, the operator, and then the right-hand side, which is the value. So in this particular case, I'm saying I want to essentially make sure that the supplier ID is equal to the value that is retrieved from the query string. There's an important fourth argument that I specify, which is and this argument specifies whether the value is an ID or whether it is the display foreign key as value. For example, normally in the database, you would have set supplier ID equal to 37, but the 37 supplier ID might be actually corresponds to something called exotic liquids or whatever the name of the supplier is. So the issue here is, am I supplying the ID 37 or am I specifying the string exotic liquids? Well, in this particular case, I don't expect the user to specify or know the ID number of each supplier. So what I want to do is specify the text string related to that supplier, and that's the reason why I specify a fourth argument, which basically says what I'm specifying or what I'm providing to the where clause is not the ID value, but the display foreign key as value. And that's what the true specifies over here, because in this particular case, I'm going to specify this as exotic liquids, or in the case of category like beverages and so on. So then all I've done is basically then done the same thing with the category, and then I return the where clause. So that's how simple it is for me to modify my create where clause, but I'm not done at this point in time. What I need to do is I also need to essentially change the populate methods for both of those drop-downs in order to set them based on the current value. Okay, let's go back to the design mode. I go to the filter section. I highlight the supplier ID filter. I go to the code section, and I look at the populate methods that are available to me. So I've got the override populate supplier ID filter over here. That's what I need to override in order to change the current value. And I'm going to do the same thing with the category. So let me select override populate, and I'm going to get a shell function here, which just calls just one line basically. And then I'm going to do the same thing by saving this, switching over to the ASPX, and adding it to the category ID filter as well. Override the populate category ID filter. I've got added this here as well. So now I've got two shell functions, one for populate supplier ID filter, another for populate category ID filter. I'm going to switch over to my cheat sheet here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the guts of this function and replace it here. And again, I'll go through this after I copy and paste this thing. And switch over, and then I will do the same thing with the category ID. And I switched over here, and I pasted it for the category ID. Now, what am I doing over here? Well, first and foremost, what I do is I call the MyBase. Typically, always, almost always, you want to call the MyBase one, and if it's C#, it would be base dot, whatever. And in this case, I'm going to say, IronSpeed Designer's generated code, go ahead and populate the supplier ID filter with whatever you're going to do. It's going to pass in whatever the values are here to this function. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to retrieve the URL value from the URL, and then I'm going to do the same check again. It's only going to be done only the first time the page is displayed. So if it is not post-back, meaning that it is being displayed the first time around, and there is a URL value, meaning that not is nothing URL value, then I simply find this value in the list that has automatically been already populated by the populate supplier ID filter, and I'm going to just select the selected value to true, assuming that this value exists in my list of filter values, basically. And I repeat the same thing for category ID. And that's basically it, and I'm done with here. If I go back now to, yes, I want to save it. Go to live preview. It'll show me the different updated screen over here. And what I want to do, notice that I have beverages, condiments, and everything else. What I want to do is add, say, category equal beverages. And if I typed everything right, and if everything worked okay, and Murphy did not strike, then hopefully what I'm going to do is, there you have it. Now my category is limited to beverages, and I have only beverages that are displayed over here. So this is only 12 items over here, as opposed to if I were to change this to the default, which is now 77 items basically over here. And I can do the same thing with supplier. Supplier equal exotic liquids. And if I want to, I can choose to specify both supplier and category. And there you have it. So I've now limited to both the supplier exotic liquid and category beverages as well. So that's basically it. And